I will say that a lot of this comes from my greatest fear as a leader is that I'm messing everything up and no one's telling me because they're too afraid to. And I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for anybody else. I don't want anyone to be like secretly messing up or like messing up and having no idea that they're messing up all the time. And I don't want to have that impact on other people. And I just assume that most people are not trying to make the people around them have a bad time. And I think that feedback is key to making sure that you're being a good citizen of your organization.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where building better engineering cultures turns good devs into great teams and great teams into unstoppable innovation machines. I don't know what you get when you add AI to that, but it's going to be amazing. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. What breaks first when your engineering team starts to scale? Hint, it's not the code. This episode digs into the often overlooked reality of growing tech teams. The processes that once worked perfectly suddenly start to feel clunky, misaligned expectations, endless code reviews, unclear ownership. It's the kind of friction that kills momentum and frustrates your best people. We explore how getting crystal clear on your ways of working, from how feedback is given to how decisions are made, can be the difference between a team that scales and one that stalls. You'll also hear a smart reframing of technical debt, not as a developer gripe, but as a strategic conversation with real business impact. It's so good. Technical debt is a tough thing to talk about. Then, of course, AI. We talk about its growing role in engineering not as a threat, but as a tool to remove grunt work, spark creativity, and help teams focus on what actually matters. It's less about automation and more about amplification. So if you're building a team, evolving your culture, or just trying to make scaling a little less chaotic, this episode has the clarity you didn't know you needed. Settle in, because this one is a playbook for growing without the growing pains. Our founder on Tuesday was Daniel Nalsnik, founder of Hack Chinese, a platform born from personal frustration and turned into a high-impact tool for mastering Mandarin. Daniel helps thousands of English speakers tackle one of the world's hardest languages through spaced repetition and smart onboarding. His episode, Daniel unpacked the gritty process of finding product market fit, refining user activation, and why passion is the most underrated growth strategy of all. Our expert guest last week was Neil Twa. He is the founder of Voltage Holdings, where he's launched multiple 8-figure brands and coached over 1,000 founders on building automated e-commerce success. Neil brought a sharp insight into scaling, exit strategy, and data-driven product development. He explored the mindset required to build long-term brand value and how understanding buyer intent can drive explosive, repeatable results. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and check them out. There's lots of gold in there to be mined out. My guest today is Mary Moore Simmons, VP of Engineering at Keebo, where she leads with clarity, care, and a bold vision for building high-performing engineering teams. With over a decade in the software industry, Mary thrives in high-growth startups, balancing the rigor of scaling systems with the nuance of creating psychologically safe work environments. Her leadership philosophy centers on operational alignment, authentic feedback, and purpose-driven growth. Whether she's mentoring teams or redefining the future of engineering culture, Mary blends technical excellence with humanity and brings both to the table every time. Welcome, Mary Moore Simmons. Hey, Mary, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about process. One of the things we're talking about today. You said that processes that work at 15 people will break by 50. What is maybe the first sign that a company's engineering process isn't scaling?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I like to focus on with process is that process should always be speeding people up rather than slowing them down. So I like to put in like just enough process so that people know what they're supposed to do. It makes them go faster. They don't forget things that are important, but that they don't feel like they're being slowed down unnecessarily. And so for me, when you start to see people slowing down or getting frustrated by the process, that's usually a sign it's time to take a look at it. In some cases, it's just like education. Hey, this is actually how this works. This is why we do it. And then people are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But sometimes, a lot of the time, most of the time, the problem is that the process has started to break, either because it's slowing people down or if it's not achieving its original goal. So if you have a process whose goal it is to, I don't know, make it easy for people to communicate product requirements to engineering, for example, and you create this simple, lightweight process. And then when the team gets larger, things start getting missed or steps start getting missed, or it's not achieving its goal. So I think if it gets too heavyweight and it slows people down, or it's actually just not achieving the goal that it started out to achieve, those to me are like the two signals that probably it's time to improve the process somehow or change it.
You've been in multiple companies running engineering, VP of engineering, GitHub, Agent Sync, Keebo now. What are some of the big challenges in building an engineering team that functions really well and doesn't get stuck in processes or bureaucracy, especially as you continue to scale?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the most important thing actually is the people that you bring on, or the people that you hire and the people that you coach and grow. I personally like to surround myself with people who will call it out if they see something wrong. So people who are comfortable saying, hey, this doesn't seem right, or I don't understand why this is happening, or can you give me more context on this? I don't get it. I'm looking for people who have that curiosity, who really want things like who really want to be doing good work and really want to be having a big impact. And so when I surround myself with people who like care about the company, care about the impact that they're having on the company, care about customers, and have a curiosity and growth mindset, then they tend to bring up when things aren't working. I think that's like the most important thing is the people that you surround yourself with. But then beyond that, and like you need that to have my second thing that I look for, or that I want to have, which is then your job is to just enable them and get out of their way. Then your job is to just communicate with them, give them the information and context that they need, and then enable them to do their best work and like really listen to them and listen to feedback. It helps to have had a lot of experience of what has worked and what has not worked in different sizes and scales of organization, because you're like, oh yeah, I tried that at 5 people and it didn't work for these reasons, but then I tried it at 20 people and it totally worked. So given that information that you have, let's find something that's in the middle there. So I think that's the big thing big 3 things that I try to bring in.
I love that. It's really important to have those. Curiosity, I think, is one of the big ones, and just somebody willing to push back. It's one of the biggest benefits, I think, of a new hire is they don't know how things are supposed to be done or how things are, and they're in a great position to question and ask, why is that? And sometimes it's because we've done it that way for a long time. We don't really know anymore. Yeah, it used to work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love that. I love new hires. It's one of my favorite things. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is you kind of have to cultivate that. A lot of people in their previous roles have been penalized for having curiosity.
Yeah.
And so like you have to cultivate that actively. So when a new person, as example, comes in, I usually say, hey, we're doing a lot of things for a lot of bad reasons. I just want you to know that up front. Just because we're doing something doesn't mean it's the right way. It could just be it's just the way that we're doing. So please don't hesitate to just ask me, hey, why are we doing that? Because there might not be a good reason and you might be pointing out something that we need to fix. And beyond new hires, the people that are already there, also just celebrating it when they bring up questions or concerns, thanking them, right? It's important to create this environment where it's okay and safe and celebrated to give feedback or ask questions.
That's so good. And it's kind of that idea of psychological safety. If I speak up, am I going to get beat down? And that happens in so many organizations. And so I really like that you're creating that, but going a step further and not just the psychological safety and it's okay to speak up, but really celebrating that and encouraging them to do that. It's very different than many cultures, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it. And I think that the problem is that I was always that person that was like, hey, why is that? Why are we doing that? And I always got frustrated when organizations were like, don't ask questions like that. Would just stay in your lane. And that used to frustrate me because I saw myself and I saw other people in the organizations that I'm thinking of have really good thoughts and ideas that could improve things. And it's not getting listened to, accounted for. And there were ways in which the organizations were running inefficiently because people weren't listening to the people who are actually on the ground doing the actual work and understanding what was going on. And I have to say, I have a pet peeve for inefficiency. So it just like really bothers me when things are not running well and they could be running better, but no one's doing anything about it.
Yeah. You talked about different stages of companies. What are maybe the biggest blind spots in early stage hiring practices, and how do startup leaders fix those before it's too late?
I think that one of the hardest things in very early stage companies, it can be difficult to find really strong talent. And I think people make sort of two mistakes. One is they settle. They say, oh, it's really hard to hire people for an early stage startup. So I'm going to compromise on, usually I'm going to compromise on culture, or I'm going to compromise on people who are collaborative and kind. And so I think that's the first thing is people get worried because they need to grow really fast. And so they make compromises on culture in the early hires. And then the other mistake I think that they make is not recognizing when that person's not a fit. When I am brought in to an engineering team, usually it's because that team is not performing in some way. They are not delivering well, or not delivering on time, or their architecture is like unstable, or there's usually some sort of set of problems. And if I'm coming in a Series A startup, I almost always have engineers that are culture problems, where they're highly productive individually, but in a team setting, they slow the entire team down. Like they're individually productive, but the net impact on the business is that business is less productive because they make everyone around them miserable. And I think that happens every time. And so it's fascinating to me how there's always one or more engineers that are really bringing the room down, that people bring in early on because they're making compromises on culture in order to get productivity. But then as the team gets larger, it becomes a team activity, not an individual activity. And then your whole team is suffering. So I think those are like the two big things.
Oh, that's really good. And I don't know if listeners had the same experience. You're talking about that, and I had a couple of names come to my mind over the years. Yep, that's exactly what happened there.
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know, maybe universal that we do that. And I think it's part of a learning process. Now, how do you identify somebody who was maybe great early on, but no longer the right fit? And maybe it's because of that and it's not a culture fit, or maybe it's other reasons.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing to me is ability to collaborate with others and ability to take feedback and grow. You can be great on your own, like doing your own thing in a corner and getting a bunch of like things done. But then once you actually have to collaborate with others, that's when people can that's like the big key there. Because if they're not willing, I understand what's happening, right? They're getting used to working by themselves. And I have to say, as somebody who lives with my partner, like sometimes it's nice to just be by yourself and do whatever you want, right? You don't have to negotiate for what you're watching that day or whatever. It's nice. And so I get it, but it's they get used to just working by themselves, and then they don't know how to compromise with other people, and they don't know how to convince other people of their side of things. And so they just tend to like railroad people and say, I'm just going to do it my way. I don't really care what you think. Yeah. And that doesn't scale. And that's thing one. But thing two is if you get feedback on that and you're not willing to change, or you're not able to change, that's when I feel like, okay, like this isn't a good fit. And this is how that happens. And I do want to mention, I'm talking about culture here, but it has real technical impacts also. It has real impacts on the quality of the code, the stability of the product, and the like understandability of the code and the architecture. Because if someone's not willing to collaborate, then they're not willing to take feedback, then they end up being a worse engineer anyway, because they're not willing to learn and grow.
Yeah, I think it's never really easy to get rid of team members who have been around a long time. How do you navigate those exits with grace, but also protect the morale of the rest of the team?
That's really hard. And I'm not going to like claim that I do it well, to be honest. It's really difficult. First, it depends on it honestly, a lot of it depends on the person that you're exiting. Sometimes when you exit someone, everyone around them is, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like a mix where I think sometimes it can be complicated when a particular person was providing a very different experience to one set of people versus a different set of people. And so then like that one set of people is, yeah, that makes sense. I'm having such a better time now that they're gone. And then the other set of people is, what's going on? That person was incredibly productive. Like, why did you get rid of them?
Yeah.
And then I think the thing that happens is there's like fear of, oh, like I've always been measured by my productivity. And now that I'm seeing this person who is incredibly productive get exited from the organization, how am I supposed to perform? Like now I'm worried that I'm going to get exited because it turns out like productivity doesn't matter. I assume the like thing going on in their head. And so I think the thing that I try to do there is I set very clear written down expectations for everyone in my organization. Generally, the first thing I do when I enter an organization is I roll out career ladders and job descriptions. And then every single person is evaluated against the career ladder, the job descriptions. And it's like very clear. It's in a spreadsheet. And we like talk through it every month on here's what you're doing well, here's what I want you to work on. And so everybody should know exactly where they stand. And that is the thing that I try to do to mitigate that concern, because it is fear. It's usually, yes, people often are sad that somebody that they're working with are not working with anymore, but usually it's like fear that they're next. And so I don't want to say quiet that fear, because some people in the organization may also not be performing. I don't want to give, the other big thing is I think one way that I stray, I think from some leaders is that I don't want to give somebody a false sense of hope, or if they are on thin ice, I want them to know that, because I want them to be like, I don't know how to say this. I want them to have a landing spot. If they're worried they're going to get fired and they're worried for legitimate reason, I want them to be going and looking for another job, because I don't want to like fire someone and have them be totally surprised and have no backup plan. And I know that's weird. I've actually had leaders tell me that's not the right way to do things, because you like don't want people to quit on you until you fire them. But actually, I disagree with that. It's like more of a moral thing for me. It's like, if there's a chance that you're going to get fired, I want you to know so that you can be looking for another job, so that if you do get fired, that you have a place to land and you've done that upfront work.
I agree with that. I don't like it being a surprise. I think if somebody is surprised that when they get fired, then I haven't done my job, because it should never be a blindside. I never saw this coming. I thought I was doing awesome, and now you're telling me I'm not. Yeah. That's a huge problem for me as a leader.
Yeah, I agree. I've had that happen where I've had, despite what I thought was my best efforts, but I clearly didn't do enough. Like I've had one or two people say, oh, I'm surprised. And when I hear that, I'm like, uh-oh, I did something wrong. Yeah. I didn't do a good job of communicating the severity of the situation. That's on me. And I really need to do better next time.
Yeah, it's really setting expectations. People should absolutely know, what a good day looks like, what great performance looks like. And they should know if they're delivering that or not. And it should be pretty clear.
Yeah, it should be clear. It should not be a mystery. It should not be a surprise. Yeah, everyone should know that where they stand and whether or not they're performing well or not performing well.
You mentioned openness as a key to team evolution, and having that feedback. Yeah, how do you build a culture where feedback isn't feared or ignored, but is something that is just part of that culture?
Yeah, this is also really hard. And again, I'm not going to claim that I do it particularly well, but it's always something I'm striving for. I'll tell you first the problem and why it's hard, which is, again, historical reasons, right? Historically, people have learned that feedback is bad. Feedback is unpleasant. If you're getting feedback, that's a bad thing. And it's because most people are withholding feedback most of the time. And so by the time you're getting feedback, it's a bad thing. Like it's a bad sign. And so I think one thing that I'm trying to practice more myself is giving feedback when it's not even really feedback yet. And I'll tell you what that means, but like giving feedback when it's like, ooh, hey, that felt weird, but I don't really know what's going on. And could we talk through it? That's something I'm trying to practice more myself. And it's something that I am trying to like instill in other people is like giving feedback when it's like super small and not a big deal, because then it's less scary for you to give the feedback. Like it's less scary. I used to do a thing where and I still sometimes do this, and I'm trying to work on it, where I wait to give feedback until I have 3 different data points where I've seen the thing, I know it's a trend, I have the data to support it, and I say, hey, you're doing this behavior, here's the impact on other people, and like my ask is that you do XYZ instead. Or hey, like how can I work with you to do this? And the problem with that is that like you've waited 3 data points to talk to them about something. You've essentially almost laid a trap for them, really, by waiting for them to fail 3 times and not saying anything so that you could feel confident in the data that you bring to the conversation, which like doesn't feel particularly fair to that person. And so I think that's one thing is I try to give feedback early when it's like, hey, this is something that's not feeling right, but I'd like to talk to you about it. Or, hey, like I'm confused by this and I want to talk through it. And so that's something that I'm trying to practice more and more. But the other thing is like celebrating feedback and trying to be an example of that. When someone gives me feedback, I always say thank you. I always say thank you so much for giving me the feedback. I really appreciate it. As a leader, it's really difficult for me to get feedback because people are often worried about giving me feedback. And so I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time and like the thoughtfulness and like being willing to bring this up. So thank people for the feedback and give feedback freely. And then when people come to you and are complaining about something, or I don't know what's going on with this person, they're really bothering me, my first question is, have you talked to them about it?
That's so good. Yeah.
Hey, have you like told them that you don't like it when they say this in your like code reviews? Have you told them you don't like it? Now, it helps that I know everyone in the organization and I know how everyone will take feedback, or I have some like guess as to how people will take feedback. And so if it's someone who I know is not going to take feedback well, then it's usually like a more in-depth conversation. Okay, like you can give so-and-so the feedback and let me support you in that and come to me if it doesn't go well and I'm happy to help. So it depends on the person they're giving feedback to, but generally I'm just like, hey, have you talked to them? Have you said something? Because it sounds so simple when you say it like that.
Right.
But it's just like encouraging it. And then really it's about setting the right example yourself as well as a leader.
I like that. I think sometimes they're asking that question or bringing it up. They haven't talked to them yet because they want somebody to validate, is this actually a real concern or should I get over it? Or they don't want to rock the boat. And I think this kind of goes back to the whole thing of psychological safety and feedback and willing to question whether that is why something is being done or another person or some of that conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is this an okay place to actually have conflict, or should I just, like you said before, stay in my lane and just deal with it and not bring it up, or start looking secretly for the next gig because this is not a great place to be?
Yeah. I will say that a lot of this comes from my greatest fear as a leader is that I'm messing everything up and no one's telling me because they're too afraid to. And I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for anybody else. I don't want anyone to be like secretly messing up or like messing up and having no idea that they're messing up all the time. And I don't want to have that impact on other people. And I just assume that most people are not trying to make the people around them have a bad time. And I think that feedback is key to making sure that you're being a good citizen of your organization.
AI is definitely changing workflows. I think it's changing culture in a number of ways. That's one of the things you guys do at Keebo, specifically around Databricks and Snowflake. Yeah. How do you distinguish between engineers maybe who can 10x with AI and those who may just get overwhelmed by it?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I think when you're talking about AI, you're talking about AI code generation tools, like dev tools, AI dev tools type of things. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good question. So what I do actually, and I started doing this a lot more recently, as I've been seeing more and more AI tools come out, is I just talk to every engineer in my organization about how they're using AI tools. So I just ask, hey, how are you using these tools? Which ones are useful? Which ones are not useful? What are you enjoying? What are you not enjoying? And then sharing like tips and tricks between people and say, oh, so-and-so really found that this tool is really useful for like Java, but it's not useful for, or actually the reverse. This tool is useful for Python, but it's not useful for Java. So if you're doing Java, like this tool I've heard is better. So I'm trying to like help knowledge share and encourage knowledge sharing between engineers about how to use the AI tools. I don't know. I think that what I have experienced for people who are resistant to using AI tools, they aren't, they're usually the reason they state for not using them is like they're not useful. And that's usually what people say. They're like, oh, they're not useful, they didn't really work, or they're bad, or I don't really like the code that they put out there. And unfortunately, we're in a place where AI tools just like still aren't that user friendly.
That's true.
And like they're early and they're new. And like when I think about my sort of comparison to AI is like when computers first came out. It's like when computers first came out, they were so incredibly difficult you had to have an entire user manual just to operate this thing.
Right.
And that's where AI is right now. It's like very early stages. To be an adopter, you have to get over this like difficult user experience. Whereas iPhones or whatever are it's all just like one big beautiful button for you and like flashing lights. It's like a toddler can do it, right? And a toddler cannot use cursor, right? That's not. I understand and I acknowledge that like these tools are hard to use right now, and they're in a phase where they're hard to use. But like the people who adopted computers early were also people who were very successful often later on in like business and life because they were able to adopt these tools early. And so I want to acknowledge and empathize with the fact that like these tools are actually hard to use right now. They're still pretty rough. They're going to get easier to use in the future, but that's probably a few years out. And for now, like it helps to grow with the tools as they exist. And so I just try to like help people push through the discomfort or push through the like these tools suck. Because these tools do suck right now. Like they're not as fancy as a smartphone, but they will be useful. And if you use them, you will be more marketable. And so that's like the thing that I'm trying to work through with people. I do know that I work at startups, so it's generally easier for me to get people to adopt new things because it's a startup. Like the whole mindset is like adopting new things. Right. If you're in a larger organization, it can be a lot harder. There's a lot of people who have been there for 20, 30 years, and they've been doing exactly what they've been doing for 20 or 30 years, and they don't need to change, and they've never needed to change. And now asking them to use this tool with terrible UX, like I get it. Like I understand why people are resistant and why it's a lot harder to get them to adopt. But for me, it's about just empathizing and acknowledging that like, yeah, they're not perfect. That's for sure. And here's some tips and tricks and tips for using them because they'll make you a more valuable engineer.
Without a doubt. Are you missing key relationships that could transform your leadership? Most leaders are. They just can't see it. And here's what shocked me. The most successful leaders aren't lone heroes. They're the center of 4 specific relationships that multiply their impact while preserving their sanity. You know, you're probably like everybody else, drowning in connections, but starving for real support. And it's creating a silent epidemic of leadership burnout among executives just like you. So, take my free assessment at thecaptainskeys.com. Discover which critical relationships you're missing in under 5 minutes. And then grab my new book, The Captain's Keys. Part Netflix drama, part game-changing blueprint for leadership that actually sustains you. One CEO called it the owner's manual I never got. So stop flying blind and see what you're missing.
The other thing I think about actually is that when I think about how I'm really good Google searching for things and my parents are not, it's the same thing. It's like I grew up like with the internet, like the internet grew up, like we both were growing together. And so like I learned how to use these things as I was like, I don't know, more exposed to the world. And I adopted them and started playing with them. And there is a learning curve for everything. There's a learning curve for Google. You have to figure out how to search things. And so it's the same thing. It's like there will be a learning curve. You'll figure it out. And the learning curve is steeper than it like is going to be in the future. But I think like getting over that learning curve is important.
All the more reason to learn now because I think it makes you a lot more valuable, not only today, but in the future, because you're so far ahead of the curve. Even as the tools get better, when you really understand how it works and the thought process behind it, the results you can get out are so much better than somebody who's just starting a year later or 2 years later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about how Keebo helps companies and you're using AI specifically around cost optimization and performance efficiency.
Yeah, so this is in converse a great example of where AI doesn't have a steep learning curve because we're doing it for you. But yeah, so the way Keebo works is we use AI to autonomously optimize your workloads on data warehouses. Right now, we're supporting Snowflake and Databricks, but we're planning to expand beyond that to expand to BigQuery, Redshift, all the big data warehousing products. And the way it works is we train AI models on your actual warehouse patterns. So we take metadata about Snowflake warehouses. I say that because what I'm really trying to say is, like, we don't need the data within anyone's warehouse. We don't have access to any of that. We just look at performance data on your warehouse. So like, how long does it take queries to run? How many bytes scanned, et cetera? How many bytes do the queries scan? And we take all of that data and we use it to train an AI model that then autonomously acts on those warehouses to upsize them, downsize them, and change auto suspend values and suspend them when they're not in use. And that allows people to have this sort of like autonomous AI agent that's improving performance or decreasing costs for people. And the cool thing about it is, like, we handle all the complexity of AI. When you look into the UI, what you do is you say, oh, hey, like, how aggressive do I want this AI agent to be on this particular warehouse? Do I want it to be super aggressive? Do I want on cost? Or do I really want it to be more like performance enhancing, not rather than cost enhancing or cost reducing? So that's the thing that I think is interesting about Keebo is, like, yes, we use AI, but it's like all behind the scenes. And so your interface is very clean and easy of what are your goals? What do you want to do?
That's very cool. And I think it's an incredible use case for AI because it can manage things like that so much better than a human, but you do have a human in the loop option. So it's not like it's just off doing its own thing completely unregulated, but you're controlling it through the interface, but you also have human in the loop in those optimizations.
Yeah, it's nice that the human in the loop part really gives you some sort of control and gives you a way to essentially put guardrails around what this AI agent is doing for you in a
Yeah.
way that's very user friendly. The thing I think about, again, like going back to my comparison between AI and computers, I think of AI as something that is really effective at getting rid of annoying stuff that you don't want to do, like annoying manual
Yes.
stuff. And so I want to say some engineers, all they want to do in life is just optimize Snowflake warehouses. But that's not most engineers. Most
Right.
engineers don't want to just be sitting around like looking at workloads and like checking on workloads to see if they changed and then like making little tweaks and optimizations. Like, most engineers want to be doing cool stuff that brings a lot of value to the business.
Yeah.
They want to be like changing the world with some cool feature that they're building. So it gets rid of what I call manual toil that otherwise engineers would have to do, but we remove that from them so that they don't have to do like annoying stuff they don't want to do.
I like that. And I think that's one of the greatest use cases for AI is really taking up those things that are time consuming. They're things that people don't want to do and automating those and really let them focus on the things that are high value, not only for them and mentally stimulating, but also super high value for the company because they're delivering things that matter for customers.
Yeah, I think that people get afraid AI is going to take all of our jobs, and it's no, like, AI is just going to make your life be more fun. I think it'll just mean your brain will be working on higher level problems because the simple, like, annoying, like, manual stuff is going to be removed.
And it's something that I think makes our lives all better. It doesn't even matter what the role is. And if you can remove those things, sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Automated testing is another area that we're seeing a lot of changes with AI. And without automated testing, everything breaks. And I have experienced that. I think probably a lot of other founders have experienced that without testing. What is maybe your bare minimum test strategy for teams that are just starting to scale so that they can actually push releases without worrying about what's going to blow up?
Yeah, this is a great question because there's the reality that is today, but then there's also some pretty exciting startups out there that are doing really interesting things around like using AI for test automation. So I'll like touch on those, but I will say that the minimum testing, wow, that's a hard question to answer. So I'll talk about testing, just like testing generally. First thing about testing is write your code with the expectation that you need to know how to test it. That like you have to write your code in a way that makes it easy to write tests for your code. So that's the first thing is think about testing when you're writing your code. Don't like write all your code and then think about testing. Think about like, how am I going to test this to make sure it works while I'm writing the code? One of the hardest or one of the most difficult problems that become like a brick wall later on when you're realizing that you need to care about quality more than you did before is that your code is written in a way that makes it very difficult to write reasonable tests. So that's like the first thing is write your code to make it easy to test. And then there's the standard, there's different schools of thought on how much should you be unit testing versus how much you should be integration testing. And maybe, I don't know if this is a spicy take or not, but it really depends on your use case and your software and the feature that you're writing. Some people are like, actually, we shouldn't be writing unit tests. It's all about integration tests. But there's definitely certain types of features where it's just so much easier to just write a unit test than it would be to try to write an integration test. So I think my answer is just write the thing that makes sense. If you need to be testing something that only needs to be tested locally and it's just like testing the functionality within the code, just write a unit test. If you need to be, if it's really important that you need to be testing how your code interacts with another service, that's an integration test, right? So
Sure.
There's ways you can mock it and make it anyway, whatever. Sorry. So that make the test make sense for what you're building. But the biggest thing once you get to a higher level is monitor what matters, test what matters. So if you're trying to move quickly, and as a person who's always at startups, like I'm always trying to move quickly, and you know that you have to cut corners on some of your tests, then make sure that you're thinking about what is the thing that my customer is going to be really mad about if it breaks.
Yes.
What's going to make my customer mad? And how do I make that not happen? And so if you're having to cut corners, you're having to move fast, and you can't feel like you really get the time to thoroughly test. I bring this mindset to monitoring, alerting too, not just testing, but what's going to piss my customer off if it breaks? And that's what you should be focused on. And then I do want to briefly mention, this is a very old school way at this point of writing tests, right? That's like me telling like you, hey, you can write your own tests. And I do want to mention there are the AI coding tools out there make writing tests a lot easier and faster. That's the other thing. That's like the first thing that I noticed these AI tools doing well is writing tests. And it's because, again, it's like annoying manual toil. And so it's repeatable. It's something that's like easier to learn. And that's why engineers hate doing it, because it's like they want to focus on fun, interesting stuff, not manual toil of, okay, like, all right, I have to go test, I have to write this test and this test, and like every class needs a test. So it's annoying manual toil. So it is really helpful. I will say that that's the basis. Once you have AI tools available to you, which hopefully everybody does, have those AI tools write the test for you, but you are still like, you have to be in the driver's seat. Like you still have to bring your common sense to that situation. Otherwise, this is the problem with AI tools today. I'm going to like paraphrase one of my engineers. This AI tool made me 2x faster, but it also can take me 10x in the wrong direction. So like you have to like, you kind of have to be watching these things. You kind of have to, like your AI tool is only as good as you are at this point. And like maybe in the future it'll be better. And I really hope it will. But for now, your AI tool is only as good as you are. So like I say, yes, use AI tools to write tests, but that's why I started with, okay, but also let's talk about testing, because you have to be in the driver's seat on creating these tests. And then the next thing I wanted to mention on like things that are exciting, that there's some startups out there that are doing fully autonomous testing, which I'm pretty excited about. I haven't used any of them yet. I'm just about to do a trial with one of them like next week, and I'm pretty excited about it. But there are some companies out there that are doing like, the claim is that they just show up in your UI, they test it for you, and they open bugs in your backlog. And so that, if that goes well, that's going to be really exciting, because even when you're having the AI tools write tests for you, it's, oh gosh, it's like people would say that they want like faster horses, but like then you give them a car and they're like, oh, this is way better. It's the same thing. It's like what we're doing is we're doing the old thing and then just like making AI tools make it faster. But wouldn't it be cool if we could do this fancy new thing where we didn't have to write tests at all and AI would just test everything for us? So if that works out, which I said I haven't tested it out yet, then that'll be really cool.
And if it doesn't today, it's coming for sure. Every iteration, it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, it does. That's one thing that I love, is that I think that's going back to like people who aren't adopting AI tools because they don't like them or they're not useful. I admit, like, they're not great now, to be honest. Like, they're pretty cool and they're definitely helpful. And like I said, I've had people say I'm 2x faster with these tools, but it's like how you use them. And I think hopefully as they advance, they'll get better and it'll be easier to use them and they'll be more effective.
One of the things that you mentioned when talking about testing is just speed and getting things out and pushing code. How do you handle prioritization, especially when you've got growth pressure, startups or early stage companies? Growth is always there. Technical debt, especially as you start to hit that growth stage, a lot of that stuff we did early on, you look back and go, that wasn't the best way to do it. We said we'd fix it later, and here is later. And then we also have to balance a lean team. So growth pressure, technical debt, and lean team. And how do you manage all that? How do you prioritize?
I think the most important thing that an engineering leader can do is approach making a business case for tech debt the exact same way that the product people have to make a business case for a new feature. I think a lot of times people don't think of tech debt as like important or useful because they're just like, oh, it's just like tech debt and the engineers hate it. It's okay. That doesn't quantify. I want to know what is the impact on the business. The product person can't just show up to an engineering team and say, I think this is cool, so you should just build it because otherwise I'll be annoyed. Like that doesn't make any sense. And
we did that in the early days of startups.
That's fair, actually. Yeah, when you're early stage, it's like a little bit harder to do that, right? Because it's like we don't have time. Like we're just going. But when you start to have more than a few people, when you start to have 15, 20 people, then it doesn't really work as well. So I try to approach tech debt the same way that we approach the product problems or the product features. And then it's like easy. Then we're talking the same language. Then it's all just stuff to do, and everything that's like a thing to do, every like project or feature or like thing that you want to work on is okay, cool. Here's the impact of the business. Here's how much it's going to increase revenue. Here's how much it's going to decrease costs. Here's how much it's going to reduce bugs. Here's how much it's going to make engineers faster in this area of the code. And then it's just a business trade-off. And I'm not like saying that I don't want to say that this is the recipe to getting your tech debt actually worked on, because that's not always true. Because when a business leader is looking at these different options of, okay, do I make my engineers faster? Or do I go build this feature that's going to get me to close this deal that's like $1 million? I'm going to close the $1 million deal. Like I'm not like, right. And I'll deal with my engineers being slow later. And so like, even when you start to present that, it doesn't mean that your tech debt's automatically going to get worked on. But what I like to do is just like regularly present, here are the problems in engineering. Here's why they could be faster. Here are the things that we could be doing to make them faster. And then I continue to present that and then wait for my CEO to be like, why are your engineers so slow? And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you asked. Here's like my like beautifully curated list of all of the things that we could do of various sizes that would speed us up in various areas. Like, which do you want to pick from this menu today? And so like, you have to be ready for that, because then you're like on it and it's not a surprise. Like you were able to say, yeah, I've been talking about this for a year. Totally fine. I'm not upset with any of the decisions we made before this. I agree. These were the right business decisions. Now that this is a big problem for you, here's what we can do about it. And so I like to just like, if you just present it all in the same language, like it's not going to get prioritized right away, but eventually someone's going to say, oh, this pain point sucks. I hate that my engineers are, every time I work in this billing code, it takes them 3 times as long. And I'm like, this is true. Here's what we could do to fix that if you want.
I think the default solution in the past has been, we just need to hire more engineers. That'll make it faster.
Yeah, I disagree.
Yeah, you're right.
I disagree. And I'm sure more engineering leaders would be like, I want a bigger team. And it's bigger teams are inefficient.
They are.
I will take a 3-person team over a 6-person team any day. It is faster. I think probably ideal team size is probably like 4 or 5 because you want redundancy. But like the bigger, and so I'm just talking about individual engineering teams, but every time you make a team bigger, and it scales to organizations. So yes, you have like teams of 5, but 2 teams of 5 is still faster than 10 teams of 5. When you add people, you add this like overhead of like inefficiency. And so I'd rather have 5 faster engineers than 10 slower engineers, because they're going to be even slower. I
remember asking the question, how come we're delivering less with 40 people than we did at 3? How does this math even work? And then that's exactly it. It's just the inefficiency of larger teams. And that's a really tough thing. And you can't just throw more people at the problem and think it's going to get better.
Yeah, I've definitely had to have some hard conversations with like managers or directors who reported to me where they said, we just need more people. And I'm like, your team's not operating well. I'm not going to throw more bodies at that black hole. Like that's not a good time. Like, When you get your team operating better, then you can have more people. But for now, I'm just throwing bodies at a problem that's just going to suck them under. And I've had to have some hard conversations with people and be like, let's work on the functioning of your team. But I will say that actually what's interesting is at the leadership level, I've never had any CEO be like, I want you to throw more bodies at the problem when I'm telling them that the team is inefficient. Or if they do, they're like, I acknowledge that this is not a good long-term solution, but like to get this short-term goal out, let's throw more bodies at it. But then right after that, I need you to make this team more efficient.
What about some of those efficiencies? What's a process improvement you implemented, maybe had a surprising impact? And what is it that made it work?
I think I'll start with like the first thing that came to mind, which is that something that is surprising is like ways of working conversations on teams. That's like a surprisingly positive impact. If when you are forming a team or if you're a new manager to a team, just sitting down and saying, hey, can we align on what our ways of working are? How do we do code reviews? How many code reviews do we need? How do we resolve it if there is a disagreement in a code review? How do we work with product on how to define requirements? So just like, how do we work with each other and how do we work with our biggest stakeholders? That is an incredibly valuable exercise that makes the team faster and happier. And so that's like a one that like maybe is more surprising because I think it's surprising because I don't think a lot of people do it. I don't think I see a lot of teams doing that.
Yeah.
Or when they do that, it's like after something's gone wrong. It's like we're doing ways of working because one of you almost punched the other one in the face. And so like now we have to do ways of working because like things are out of control. And so like that, it's also helpful in that case too. But I think it's like a helpful thing to do up front just to set clear expectations of how do we all work together and how do we work with our biggest stakeholders. That's like a thing that I think not very many people do. And so it can be maybe surprising to some. That's like the first one that comes to mind, but there's so many that I can think of. But I'll stop there.
That's a really good one. And doing that, you're right. I think a lot of people don't do that in the beginning. And it would be super helpful and healthy for teams if we start doing that a lot more and really get in that alignment early on.
Yeah. And it helps to have like a template for those. Like you can find one online because that can feel overwhelming. Like, how do we work together? Oh my gosh, where do I start? There's a million ways in which people work together. But I think for engineering teams, there's like templates out there of, okay, what do you need to agree on for ways of working? And that can help you get started.
Excellent. Where can people learn more about you and about Keebo online?
Yeah, Keebo's website is keebo.ai. So you can go online, learn more about Keebo, learn about our products, and reach out if you want to talk to any of us, including me, about our products and get a demo. And then for me, I guess I'm on LinkedIn, Mary Moore Simmons. My GitHub handle is MMS the Pizza Thief. So if you want to find me on GitHub, that's where I'm at. But I think that's the main places to find me.
Outstanding. And I have to ask, where did MMS the Pizza Thief come from? There's got to be a story.
I really like pizza, and I am not above thieving if I'm in the right mood at the right time of day with the right incentives, the right beer incentives.
Sounds great. We'll make sure and link everything in the socials, and maybe we'll put a little pizza offer in there too. Who knows?
I love it.
Mary, thanks for being on the show today. It's been such a delight. So thank you for being on SaaS Fuel.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been wonderful for me as well. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks again, Mary, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Mary and Keebo at keebo.ai. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel where we have full video episodes, trainings, shorts, reels, lots of stuff over there for you, even some outtakes. So lots of resources on YouTube. It's at Champion Leadership. And thought leaders share. I'll bet that's you. Share this episode with a marketer who's tired of fluff and ready for substance. It might just be the clarity their next campaign needs. Everyone who shares this week gets a retargeted ad from the universe, reminding them that they're doing better than they think. Sponsored by Serotonin. What do 3 successful exits and a Harvard MBA teach you about scaling startups the right way? Our founder next week is Eli Portnoy, founder and CEO of backengine.ai. It's a platform redefining how AI boosts customer retention and lifetime value. A serial builder and thought leader, Eli's entrepreneurial story is packed with strategic pivots, real world leadership, and next level scale. And after that is Scott Anderson. Scott is the author of You're Not Toast and the founder of Double Dare, where he helps high achieving professionals break free from burnout and reclaim passion in their work. His burnout breakthrough method is a practical, transformative roadmap to sustainable success rooted in clarity, values, and deep personal renewal. And you know what is great timing? Because the Captain's Keys is out, and that is all about leadership doesn't have to be lonely at the top. So you should check that out. Grab yourself a copy and then get ready for Eli and then, of course, Scott's episode. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSFuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.
Let's go!